Hello, and welcome to Southern Tier Gardening. My name's Eric. Today is August 13th, and for today's video, I was gonna start with showing you guys what I've been harvesting this week, and then I'm gonna do a full garden tour, and lastly, today I'm going to talk in more detail, get into some specifics about growing sweet potatoes. So let's get going. For those of you that are new to my channel, I live in South Coastal Georgia. I garden in hardiness zone 8B, which means I can pretty much grow food year round. I have two 15 by 25 in-ground garden plots. I also have a small herb garden. So let's get going. We can actually start right over here at the herb garden. Not much new, only a couple quick things I wanted to point out over here. You can see my basil plant is still doing really well. I'm cooking with and harvesting a lot of Thai basil. I use a lot of mint, regular basil, and this plant right here, these are two cayenne pepper plants that I've been growing this year in a container. I've harvested lots of cayenne peppers. I've talked to you guys about that. And peppers are, the way they grow on the plant, they kind of, you'll hear people say that you'll get a flush of peppers. So you'll get an early harvest of peppers down low at the plant. Then you'll wait a couple weeks and you'll get another harvest of peppers. And now you can see as this plant continues to grow and get taller, I'm starting to get another flush of peppers. I'm getting lots of cayenne starting to form at the top of this plant. This pepper plant will continue to grow and produce peppers really until my first frost. For me in hardiness zone 8B, my first frost date is typically around Thanksgiving time or mid-November. So really happy with how this has worked out growing this cayenne pepper plant in a container. So moving along, we can head over to this garden. This garden plot was where I grew my spring and early summer crops. I grew yellow squash, I grew tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, and eggplant. At this point, I've cleared this entire garden space out. The only thing I still have growing over here are my marigolds, and I have one last eggplant that's growing and still producing eggplants. So I left that plant in the ground, but otherwise all my spring plants died, but I had really good, really successful harvests this year. I was very pleased, but these plants just can't survive down here in our extreme heat and humidity. So I wanted to talk to you guys about what I'm going to do next in this garden space. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to plant a cover crop. And what I mean by a cover crop, I'll show you guys. The seeds are right here. I am going to plant some pink eye peas. These are the seeds right here. And if you look at them, they kind of look like black eye peas, because that's basically what they are. I'm growing pink eye peas. They're almost identical, but if you can picture a black eye pea, the eye of the pea or the bean is black. Well, these pink eyes, that eye is pink, and I like them a little bit better. I personally think they have better flavor than black-eyed peas, but they're very similar. This is a legume, and what I'm going to do is I've got a pound of seed, and I am going to basically broadcast the seeds over this entire garden plot. And although this is obviously an edible vegetable, you know, people would normally grow this to harvest pink-eyed peas. My main purpose of growing this crop is to use it as a cover crop. I will spread these seeds over the entire garden plot. Hopefully I get good germination and these plants start to grow. And what I will ultimately do is hopefully I can harvest some pink-eyed peas. But I'm really growing this crop specifically for, when these plants grow, to till the leaves and the plant material and the roots of these pink-eyed peas back into the soil. So I'm growing this crop. I've talked to you guys about cover crops. I'm growing it basically to ultimately till back into my soil. And the reason I chose pink-eyed peas is because they're a legume and they're a nitrogen fixer. So they're a plant that naturally brings nitrogen into the plant material and into your soil. So when I cultivate this, they call it green manure. It's a natural organic way to bring healthy material into your soil. So by doing that, I will be incorporating a lot of nitrogen back into my soil. And what I will be planting here after these beans are done, this will be about mid to late October, is I will till all those plants into the soil, incorporating all that nitrogen and organic material back into the soil. And this is the garden plot where I will grow my winter vegetables, things like collard greens, cabbage, broccoli, onions. These are all crops that need a lot of nitrogen. Nitrogen promotes the green leafy growth of your plant. And if you think about when you grow collard greens or cabbage, you're basically trying to grow leaves. So these crops need a lot of nitrogen. So that's why I'm going to be growing a cover crop in this plot to get this soil ready for winter planting. So probably tomorrow I will come in here and, like I say, I will just kind of throw these seeds over the entire garden space, broadcast them. I will rake them in lightly and water the plot real good and cross my fingers that I get good germination, because I would love this entire plot just to be covered with pink-eyed pea plants, leaves, the roots. All that material will be tilled back into the garden soil. It's just an amazing. I grew a winter cover crop on this side, if you guys remember, of mustard greens, and I really feel like it benefited my crops this year. Just getting that natural material back into your soil is just, it's just a great thing to be doing. So that's the next plan for this garden space. If we come here, I can show you guys what I've been harvesting this week. I obviously don't have as many things growing this time of year, but if you look here, I'm harvesting lots of eggplant, just beautiful eggplant here. That's why I kept this plant. Now I'll remove this eggplant once these pink-eyed peas start growing, but I can leave this eggplant here probably a couple more weeks, because if you look here, this plant is still, you know, producing lots of eggplant. So I'm gonna let it go till it pretty much stops producing, or my beans start to overtake the garden space, or my pink-eyed peas, I should say. So anyway, I'm also harvesting lots of okra. You can see this is the okra right here, and I wanted to show you guys these 2 jars. This past week, before I removed my pepper plants, I had one last harvest of jalapenos and banana peppers, and what I made were some pickled peppers. This is a jar of pickled sweet banana peppers, and this is a jar of pickled jalapenos. I love these peppers like on sandwiches or burgers. The jalapenos I love to put on tacos or nachos. And I ended up getting 2 pints of the sweet banana peppers and 2 pints of the jalapenos. So that was a pretty cool way to finish up my pepper season. Other than that, like I say, I've just been harvesting a lot of herbs. I've been cooking with a lot of basil. I've been cooking with a lot of oregano. So next, we can come over here to this garden space. And this is the garden where I have 3 crops going. I am growing Cherokee tan pumpkins. I'm growing okra over here. And I'm growing sweet potatoes. So first, I wanted to show you guys these plants around the perimeter. They look like, winter squash plants. These are my Cherokee tan pumpkins. They're doing really well. Last year, I will say I had better looking plants. I'm not going to get as good of a harvest this year. These plants have really struggled this year with disease and our heat and humidity. You can see some of the leaves have started to yellow, but I still have quite a few pumpkins in here forming. Let's go down here. I'll show you guys what they look like when they're younger and still green. If you look right there, that's a young pumpkin right there. There's another one right there. That's what they look like when they're still unripe. And then if we come over here, I can show you guys actually one that's ready to harvest. I'm going to try to do this while I'm holding the phone here so you guys can see. But I've got when you harvest these pumpkins, you want to use a good pair of pruners. And if we look right here, see how this pumpkin has started to turn tan, nice and big. That's a pumpkin that's ready to harvest. So if you look here, it has a real long stem on it. And when you harvest it, you want to try to cut and leave as much of this stem onto the pumpkin as you can. So I'm going to take my pruners and I'm going to come right up to where this hits the plant and give it a snip. And there's my first Cherokee tan pumpkin of this year. Great looking vegetable. I'll just set it over here till I'm done filming the video. But if you look in here, there's another one right there. So I'm harvesting, getting some pumpkins, but I'm not getting quite as many as last year. But when you garden, every year is different, every season is different. So I'm always thankful for anything that I can get. So these are one of my favorite vegetables to grow. So I'm super excited that I'm going to be able to harvest some pumpkins this year. Now, next I wanted to talk to you guys in more depth about growing sweet potatoes. If you guys look here in the middle, this ground cover area, these are all sweet potato vines. This is my sweet potato plot. I have 3 rows of sweet potatoes growing. I did these rows on a 3-foot spacing, and I planted the plants about 18 inches apart. So in each one of these rows, I started with about 15 or 16 actual plants, transplants, if you will. They call them slips. And those 45 to 50 plants have now grown all these leaves and completely covered this garden space. And this is what you want. You want your sweet potato vines to be nice and thick like this, nice and green. I grew this garden last year as far as this design where I have my pumpkins around the perimeter. And last year I kind of just let it go wild. But if you look, this year I've been trying to keep like a little bit of separation between the two crops so they're not competing with each other. And what I do is every once in a while when these sweet potato vines start to grow over here to where the pumpkins are, I just take these vines and I kind of just, pull them into the middle. So I'm constantly pulling these vines and keeping the sweet potato plants contained in the center of this garden. Because like I say, last year I had the pumpkin vines growing all through the middle of the sweet potatoes, and I think there was a little bit of competition for water and nutrients. I had good harvests last year, but I'm really thinking this year, by keeping these sweet potatoes separated on their own in the middle, I'm hoping to have a better harvest. But overall, I'm super happy with how these plants look. I'm growing 3 different varieties of sweet potatoes. This first row is called Beauregard. Beauregard is probably the most common variety of sweet potato. Chances are if you buy a sweet potato in the store, it's a Beauregard variety. They grow a lot of them up in North Carolina. It's an easy one to grow, consistent. They recommend Beauregard for beginning gardeners. So that's why I always grow Beauregard, because that's the one that I pretty much know I'm going to get a harvest out of. They're really adaptable. They can take drought. They can take a lot of water. They're just a great variety. So I always grow Beauregard. The middle row is called Georgia Jet. That's a new variety for me. The reason I chose Georgia Jet is because they're known to grow very well in my area. They're also a sweet potato that has a very, very high sugar content. They say they're one of the sweetest sweet potatoes. So people grow Georgia Jet for making like desserts. Think about your sweet potato pie. Anything that you want really the sugar to come out of. So the middle row is the Georgia Jet. Now this last row over here, my third row, is called O. Henry. And I'm super excited about this variety. O. Henry is actually a sweet potato that is white in color. And of my 3 that I'm growing, it has the lowest sugar content. So they say they make great sweet potato fries. They say they're great for baking, or soups and stews. So I can't wait to harvest these 3 different varieties and compare them and try them in different recipes. That's what's so awesome about growing, your own food in your own garden. You have access to all these different varieties that you often won't find in the grocery store, or if you do find things, they're not going to label, it's not going to be like a Georgia Jet sweet potato at Kroger. It's just going to be sweet potatoes. So I love just trying different varieties and using them in recipes. Super excited. But you can see over here, I talked about, I have the separation. I've got my sweet potatoes over here, and I'm keeping my pumpkin vines over here. And in the middle here, this is my okra. Some of my okra plants have been suffering this year. I'm not really sure why. If you look at that one right there, he doesn't look too good. He's got some new growth on the bottom though. But overall, I've been harvesting lots of okra. If you look right here, there's one right there growing that I'll harvest after this video. These okra plants will produce 2 or 3 pods at a time. So what I do is throughout the week, I'll harvest them. Like today, I'm going to harvest 1 okra. But throughout the week, I put them in a Ziploc bag and keep them. And then by the weekend, I've got like 30 okra pods. And then I can actually, make a respectable recipe, or have enough that you can actually do something with. And I love basically just deep frying, put a little cornmeal on them and slice it up and fry the okra, dip it in ranch dressing. That's how I like to eat it. It's just delicious. But overall, I'm pretty happy with these plants. I've had better okra seasons. Like I say, some of these plants are looking a little rough, but they're all still producing, especially these ones down here at the end. They're nice and tall. These plants are about 5 feet tall now. So there's another pumpkin right there. You can see him starting to get a little bit bigger and starting to turn tan. These pumpkins, they're like tomatoes. Once they start to turn tan, you can actually harvest them, and they will even when they're mostly green, once they just barely start to turn tan like this one, you can harvest it, and then when you keep it indoors, it will continue to ripen and ultimately turn that really light tan color that they have when they're fully ripe and fully mature. These pumpkins, I've talked about them, they're absolutely delicious. They taste like a butternut squash, but even better. They're just so sweet, so just amazing. So anyway, that's where I'm at. One thing I talked about in this garden space, I haven't used any synthetic fertilizer over here. I've only used my own homemade compost. And I think I kind of learned a little bit of lesson. I think I still need to incorporate fertilizer, because you can see I talked about these squash plants were a lot healthier last year. I've had some yellowing of the leaves. I think these plants are just needing a little bit more nutrition. But that's how you learn. I learned that I probably do need to fertilize in addition to using my compost, especially these okra plants. I do think that they look this way because they just probably needed a little bit more nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium throughout the growing season. But overall, I'm still very happy with this garden space, and I'm very excited about these sweet potatoes. I planted these sweet potatoes back on May 25th. So they've been in the ground now for about 80 days. I won't even think about harvesting these sweet potatoes probably until early October. Sweet potatoes are different than regular potatoes in the sense that the longer that they're in the ground, they're just going to continue to get larger and larger. And last year, I think I harvested my sweet potatoes too early because a lot of them were on the small side. So I basically am just going to let these stay in the garden as long as the plants are thriving and not dying. I'm going to let them go until, heck, it might even be late October. So I just have to be patient with those and keep an eye on them. But overall, I'm super happy with this garden space. I'm going to grab my first Cherokee Tan pumpkin here, and I think I'm going to sign off for the video today. But I'm so glad I found some time to come out here and show you guys what's going on in the garden in early August here. Like I say, I'm going to be planting my cover crop over there of pink-eye peas in that space and start to get that ready for fall planting. And after I harvest these sweet potatoes and I remove all these plants on this side, the next thing that I will grow in this garden space will be a winter cover crop, and that will probably be mustard greens again. So anyway, thanks so much for joining me. I hope everyone has a great weekend. I can't thank you guys enough for watching my videos. I hope you guys get something out of them. I just love, kind of showing you guys what's going on and how I garden. So once again, my name's Eric, and this has been Southern Tier Gardening.